Hi there, fellow grognards. It's Al here from Grumpy Grognard Gaming, and today, nice positive video, got a product review for you. Masters of the Universe Battleground. Now, I'm going to go through like a unboxing throughs book, the actual contents of the box. But then I've actually managed to play a couple of games of this. So I'm also going to give you some thoughts about the gameplay and what kind of game I think it is. So starting off with the game itself, Masters of the Universe Battleground is what we in the Europe region got a couple of years ago, and I believe the rest of the world is just getting it as a Kickstarter or Gamefound campaign now. Basically what happened was the license was split. America got to have a board game called, I think it was Fields of Eternia. We didn't get that in the UK, we got this instead. Now, I didn't pay any attention at the time, and I freely confess that my reason behind that is pretty much that I was just never that much into He-Man, if I'm being completely honest with you. When I was growing up as a kid, the cartoons I watched were Transformers, Mask, Thundercats, Jason the Wheeled Warriors. He-Man came quite a little bit down there. I remember watching it as a kid, but the other ones were a bit more sort of interesting to me. So this passed me by. I didn't really check it out, but I saw a game that PlayOn Tabletop played, accompanied by JT's scarily accurate Skeletor impression, and I was impressed. So I thought, let's have a look at this. It looks good. I was expecting it to come in, sort of the over £100, sort of the 110, £120 mark, a bit like Marvel version, Crisis Protocol. I was pleasantly surprised to see that this is much cheaper. I actually managed to pick this up from a third-party retailer for £60, and 60 to 65 is more or less what you should be looking to pay if you're in the UK. I have no idea how that will translate in the US because this is made by Archon Studios, who are based in Europe, in Poland. Full disclaimer, Archon Studios is what used to be Prodos. Prodos made the Alien vs Predator game and Kickstarter, and they made a right hash of it. They ballsed up the campaign so badly that they had to take it down. The game delivered 2 years late. The models were superb. The game itself was clunky. As fans, they tried to put too much stuff into it out of the movies and the comic books, and it ended up really weighing down the mechanics of the game. The game was broken as hell. Predators with throwing discs were unstoppable. It was a noble attempt, but not good. To further damage Prodos' name, they decided to launch Space Crusade, take the Space Crusade name, and make it into a range of the most horrific cheesecake models that you've ever seen. Like, they were awful, absolutely awful. So Prodos didn't do very well. They lost the license and they disappeared. They came back as Archon Studios, and since then they seem to have been doing good work, and I'm always one for giving somebody a second chance. And I picked this up and I was like, let's have a look, let's see what they've learned, and let's see what they've managed to produce for us. On we go with the unboxing. So, one thing about this box, and it's a simple thing, it's quite a chunky box, but they've got this nice sort of a spot UV laminated effect. It doesn't really show in the video, but it's all on the Masters of the Universe logo, and it's also on the characters as well, so that's quite nice. So you've got your normal protector thing on there. We take that off and you've got all the sprues. And there's a lot of plastic in here, I have to say, especially for the money. Now, the sprues themselves are made by Archon in Poland. They're one of those few companies that have got a plastic press, like GW. These are nice. There's good detail on them. It's not soft. It's not quite GW quality, is what I would say. You can tell the difference. It is very good, but it feels to me like that kind of plastic that GW make the scenery out of. The stuff that comes from China. It's like that. It's a harder material for sure. And the gates on the sprues are pretty hefty. But there's some nice scenery in here, and you get a fair chunk of the scenery, and it is chunky stuff. The gates on these are particularly heavy. They really are. Like, these were a bit of a pain to remove from the sprue. It's nice stuff. You get a lot of it. I believe it's 2 of each sprue, and there's 1 unique sprue. But it's more than enough to cover the board. Yeah, I was quite impressed by that already. Already, there's quite a lot of plastic in there, plastic goodness. Obviously, you've got your tokens. I don't open them in this video because punching tokens is a singularly joyous experience for me, and I wanted to savour it. And these popped out like a dream. They're so well cut. They're just boom, boom, boom. No tearing, no nothing. Absolutely fantastic. You'll notice you also get a board in there. Now, one thing I will say about the board is it is great quality. It's nice and thick. It folds out lovely, no tearing again, but it's not double-sided, and I really kind of wish it had been. So you're only going to get 1 Battleground to fight on for now. So obviously then you've got your rule books. There's 3 separate books. You've got the rule book, the Battlegrounds book, and you've got the instruction manual, which is very good. Don't do what I just did. Those dice, yes, I know we've all got millions of dice. Don't chuck them away. Orko's flight stand is in there, and I had to go dig it out. Then you've got your cards. There's a lot of cards, actually, and what I really like about this is each player has their own decks of cards. So obviously you've got a Evil Forces and a Masters of the Universe deck for your characters and their items and everything like that. But on top of that, these fate cards that are an integral part of the game, and one of the really cool mechanics that I'll talk about in a bit, each player gets a deck of those as well, which is not a nice touch. And then there's also a small pack of cards that has sort of minor items and things like that. Like think of it like war gear that you can use to bulk out your characters. It's hard filming things with one hand while going through a deck of cards. So there we go. You can see the artwork is of the cartoon style. It's not exactly like the cartoon, oddly enough, I would say. It's of the cartoon style, but it's not exactly the same. I don't know if that's maybe a licensing, like they weren't able to take actual shots from the cartoon or something. I'm not 100% sure. But the cards are nice quality. There's a care to detail and a level of enthusiasm and fan element from this game that thankfully Arkham Studios, because I checked the developers' names, and it's a Jaraz Law and somebody else, I think it might be Vitek, I can't remember, who did the Aliens game, and they've learnt a lot. The rules for this are very, very solid. So here's your rule book. Obviously, laid out everything you get. The rules are nicely laid out. It's not a massive rule book, so I think it's about 30 pages of rules in total, and I didn't really have any major problems. I would recommend reading them carefully. There was one thing with the fate cards that I got wrong in my first game, but overall it's pretty good. Battlegrounds book is quite literally just different layouts of the table, and that's because this is designed as a competitive game with expansions, different cards, and on the back of that Battlegrounds book there is here's your instructions. They're perfectly good. I'm going to go through the building of these models separately because ye gods, some of them were a absolute pain in the arse, and I'll have some pictures of that for you. But yeah, that's your box, and honestly, for 60 quid, I was well chuffed. I was like, yep, already happy with that. If the game turns out to be great, that's a bonus, but I've got some lovely models, and I was quite pleased. So a little bit more about the models. The Masters of the Universe, you get He-Man, obviously. You get Stratos, you get Ram Man, you get Man-at-Arms, and you get that annoying little twerp Orko. And as I said, Orko's flight stand is in with the dice, so don't yeet them like I just did. For the bad guys, you get Skeletor, obviously, Evil Lyn, Merman, Trapjaw, and Triclops. So it's pretty good. You've got 10 models in total. It seems perfectly reasonable for the price. They all went together fairly well, fairly easily. They were all right to put together. If you've done GW stuff, you're not going to have any problems with the put together and the cleanup, apart from a couple of exceptions. One, Evil Lyn's staff is joined to a hand and wrist in a really weird way. The hand's on the staff and that attaches to a wrist, and it's already fallen off twice no matter what the hell I do, so watch out for that one. And secondly, Skeletor's left arm is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. The shoulder pad is separate, but the shoulder pad is also part of the arm, so you have to kind of join the arm on by the smallest surface area possible, leaving a massive chunk out of the shoulder, and then that's made up out of the shoulder pad. That was, that one I looked at and I was just like, no. That took me a little while to sort out, that did. Once I got it, the models look great. They'll go together nice. They've got nice bases. The bases are pretty chunky, I've got to say. But they reminded me more or less of kind of the Underworld's kits, the GW Underworld's kits. Just a few more parts. But they're not as bad as the Marvel Crisis Protocol ones, where Baron Zemo's elbow pads were separate pieces. So, bear that in mind. You will have a bit of trouble with Skeletor. I defy anybody to get that right the first time round. I was just like, what? There's just plastic glue everywhere. But yeah, in general, the models went together very nicely. The buildings, because of the size of the gates, they're such chunky bits of plastic, really thick. Gates are massive. So I would say don't use your best clippers on them, because you're going to be putting your clippers through unnecessarily use and stress. You want to use some old clippers to get those off. The buildings will require a bit of cleaning up. That's one other thing to mention very quickly. There are some mould lines on the models. Nothing horrific, nothing as bad as Flash, but just a few mould lines, mainly on calves and things like that you will need to clean up. They're not quite as good as GW as engineering their moulds to get it to a state where there's pretty much no mould lines. There are a few, but the models are impressive in general. The buildings, as I say, are very good. They will also need some clean up, particularly on the bases. Where you take the gates off, you're going to have bumps on the bases and the bottom of the wall section, and that means it won't stand up on the board. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, the scenery, all really, really nice stuff. On to the game rules. The first game we play, there's like a tutorial mission at the start of the rulebook. So the first game we play, let me think, it was Man-at-Arms, He-Man, and Stratos versus Skeletor, Merman, and I want to say Trapjaw. Yeah, I think it was Trapjaw. It's a fairly basic setup. There's quite a few objectives. It's an objective-based game to claim an objective. At the end of the turn, you need to be on that objective, and there needs to be nobody else either next to you or in a hex next to that objective. Basically, you just need to be the only one there. It's a hex-based system. The first game went quite well. Stratos is very fast, as you might expect, and he can jump over walls and stuff because of his wings. So he was my objective grabber. He's also got a flamethrower, so he can hit people quite well. Obviously, we all know what He-Man is. He just wades in there and gets stuck in. He hits very hard. He's quite tough, but he can't gain mana. Man-at-Arms is crazy tough and has got an arm cannon. Skeletor is he's not a heavy hitter. He's got this rule where he can teleport people next to him to bring his minions in. Trapjaw is quite a basic hitter. And Merman is all about slowing down the enemy. He's got both a freeze ray and he can make puddles that make difficult ground. The way the game works is you have a hand of 5 fate cards plus 2 glory cards which have additional missions on them. You each pick a fate card to play, put it face down, turn it over, and in the top left hand corner there's a initiative number. Whoever does the highest card goes first. It's that simple. And then the fate card tells you how many action points and mana points you will get. In addition, underneath that, there is a choice of 2 bonuses that you can pick up. So there's quite a little bit of tactical play there. Obviously, in this mission, we've only got 3 characters each, and you only activate each character once per round. So you're only going to be playing initially 3 of your 5 cards. But what you can do is when you've activated your character, you can play another card and take the bonuses from that as well. Now, I made the mistake of thinking that you also added on actions and mana points from that, which led to some fairly hilarious, heroic shenanigans from individual characters, but you don't. You just take the bonus part at the bottom. So it just allows you to get sometimes an extra mana point or an extra ability point, or it might allow you to sort of go into focus or Overwatch or something like that. So that's the initiative structure. Then what you do is obviously you activate your character. You can move, shoot, you can attack, you can cast a spell, and you can go in Overwatch and you can focus. You can only do each of these once at the cost of 1 action point, and then each time you do the action after that, it costs an additional action point. So if you're standing in combat with somebody and you want to fight them twice, you want to hit them twice with your sword, it's going to cost you 3 action points. 1 for the first attack, 2 for the second attack. But if you was to shoot somebody and then hit, then that would be 1 action point. Focus basically allows you to improve the chance of your skill test or move faster. Overwatch is exactly what you would think it is. Overwatch. It kind of works more or less like the GW version, to be honest. So you can have your action, go into Overwatch if you've got the action points for it, and then when the opponent moves into weapon range or into sort of assault range, you can then either shoot them or charge into them or whatever as what's called an interruption attack, which has a minus to the skill test. So let's talk about skill tests. In this game, every stat that you have is a number of dice that you will roll to try and achieve successes on the test. Say, for example, He-Man hits with strength of 5, so he rolls 5 dice. He can add to this with the Sword of Power by using mana that he gets when he focuses, because he can never get mana from fate cards. And you then roll those dice, and normally you're looking for 4s. Obviously, modifiers do play into the game with various different things like cards and spells and all that kind of stuff, but you're normally looking for 4s. If you're focused, you get a +1 to that, so you're looking for 3s. And if you're interrupting, so through Overwatch, or maybe you've been debuffed by some other spell, then you're looking at 5s. You take your successes, you can use mana to re-roll a dice, per mana spent, and then you have your final score. And then your opponent basically does the same. They do defense, so they roll on their toughness, pair them off until you've got them left, and then that's what you've done. But rather than being those straight wounds, each card, each weapon has a certain amount of successes to deal a certain amount of wounds, which is a nice way of balancing out the game. So it's not one success equals one wound, two success equals two wounds, three success equals three wounds. It could be that you need two successes to do one wound. So that's quite a cool way of balancing it. That's the general overview of the rules of the game. As I say, each character does have their individual skills, and like Stratos, as I say, can kind of use his jetpack to jump over things. There's also quite a lot of interplay between the characters, so you have to think about how you activate people. For example, Man-at-Arms, one of his skills that you could do is to buff another character, and then you can use that character, and you could even use that character to buff a different character. There's a lot of tactics in it. I was pleasantly surprised at the rules for this game. The tutorial game was a lot of fun, apart from that minor mistake with fate cards, because what happened was it got down to the stage where I killed all the other guys apart from Skeletor. So my missus only had Skeletor to activate, and because we didn't know any better, we were like, well, I guess you can just keep playing fate cards to activate him. So Skeletor got like 6 actions. It doesn't work like that. You just get the bonuses from the bottom of the card. But a lot of fun was had. So much fun in actual fact. The next day we played another game. Now we played this game properly, and the way the game works properly is you have 100 points to build your warband, your force. If you take all 5 characters, it's 87 points. You've only got 13 points to spend on equipment, and there's some mandatory equipment for them. Like He-Man has to have the Sword of Power. Man-at-Arms has to have his arm cannon. Skeletor has to have his Havoc Staff, and these take points as well. So taking 5 characters, probably not really an option. So we opted for 4 each. We got down to the game. The fate cards, you have a lot of fate cards in the game per player. Like each player gets about 40 cards, I would say, and you take a deck of 20. So there's additional tactics there. Do you take high initiative cards? Do you take ones that give you a lot of action points? Do you maybe take the cards that will allow you to have a certain strategy, which is what I tried doing and failed miserably? Bear in mind the glory points cards, 2 additional cards to your deck and are in your hand at all times until you play them, that also have side missions on them that will give you points. You get 20 points per objective. You get the points for each character when you knock them out, and these side missions can also be 10 or 20 points. If at the end of the turn, at the end of 4 rounds, you are more than 20 points ahead of your opponent, you win. Otherwise, there's a draw. The other way you win is if you just knock out all the other characters. Or you can just declare a draw at any point. So the tactics behind the game are quite good. There's plenty of war gear to switch about and loads of different strategies, and already people have inevitably, I mean, it's been out for 2 years, people have inevitably come up with metas, and there's expansions for them, and there'll be people who've got the metas around those as well, which I'm not really interested in. I just want a fun game that I can play. But it was fun. Yeah, this is a game that I think is going to hit the table fairly often. It doesn't take long to play. The biggest part of the game is probably the setup, because you've got a very specific way that you put the buildings on the table. And because it's a hex grid, it can sometimes be difficult to work out exactly where they are. And also the scenery pieces are donated by a pattern, like low and high terrain that is difficult to get around. That can be a little bit of a pain to work out when you're setting up. It's not a quick setup. Could be quicker, but yeah, once it's all set up and you're playing, honestly, the game goes pretty quickly. I really enjoyed it. There's plenty of strategy and tactical ability in there. The test system works very well. Each character is fairly unique and has their different ways of playing. It's well done, I do have to say. I am quite impressed. One of the only things that I would say is lacking is, because they are going for a competitive game, there is a lack of a narrative feel to any of the missions. It is just grab objective. There's no fluff. There's no bits from the cartoons or cartoon episodes or anything like that in there. It is just 2 sides turn up, fight over objectives and try and knock each other out. That's a little bit of a shame. But they could always do a narrative expansion at some point, and I would urge Archon to do so. As a competitive tournament-style game, I think it does absolutely fine. I've not seen any major problems with it. As a fun, just put down beer and pretzels type game, also a lot of fun. There are also loads of expansions. I think they've done 8 waves of expansions in total, most of which are small expansions giving you sort of like 3 characters. But again, these are very cheap and reasonable. You're looking at about, I think it's £20 for 3 characters and a load of cards. Now you compare that to Marvel. The Marvel boxes are like £35 for 2 characters and some cards. So it's way ahead of that already. And I will probably pick a couple of the expansions up, to be honest. So while I certainly don't see myself jumping into loads of the expansions, because as I say, I was never the biggest He-Man fan, but certainly I'd get Kirsty Beastman to play with. And, I'll pick up a couple of expansions for the Master of the Universe guys as well, I reckon, at that price, because we do enjoy it. Overall, Masters of the Universe, I am massively impressed. I'd still be impressed if it was more expensive. As it is, at the price that I paid, and obviously that is below the RRP, but at the RRP that they are asking for it, I think Masters of the Universe is a great deal. I would thoroughly recommend you pick it up. Miniatures are very close to GW quality. Like, really, GW needs to be looking over their shoulders, because this has impressed me a lot. And money that I might have sent GW's way, I would now be much more tempted to send Archon's way, at least for things for this game. And I'll be keeping an eye on what Archon do in the future, because if they get another IP that I really like the look of, I would be fully on board. So that's your review for this product, guys. I hope that helps you. As I said, in America, I believe it is literally either on or imminent for Gamefound. I would thoroughly recommend that you do check it out. I was very pleasantly surprised. It's the end of the review. I hope it's been helpful to you. We'll be back with some more really good stuff soon. We've got Rogue Trader retrospective, and we're going to be continuing that through the history of 40k. And I'm also working on our preview reactions video, because that was a good giggle as well. So I'll see you guys soon. Stay grognard and proud.